Welcome back to Cowork Radio. I'm Catherine Raymock.
And I'm Jane Walker-Wood.
And we are a show all about the modern entrepreneur. You can check it out at coworkradio.com.
Each week we interview two company founders, and they will share their secrets of success with you. And right now we have here with us in the studio Heather Hochrein. I'm sorry, I was practicing that too. Heather is co-founder of EV Match, which is a network that matches electric vehicles with available charging stations. Hi, Heather. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's fun to have you.
Heather.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Heather, I drive an electric car, so when I went to your website, I understood the absolute brilliance of your platform. But many of our listeners are not driving electric, so could you explain really simply what it is you're doing and how there's a need?
Absolutely. Yeah, so EV Match is a peer-to-peer network for electric vehicle charging. You could think of us like Airbnb for EV charging. So we're helping to increase the total amount of available charging options and also make these options more reliable and affordable. So the way it works, people list their home charging stations on the EV Match app, and they can rent those out to other drivers when they're not using them. And then drivers can easily find, reserve, and pay for charging all with a few quick clicks on the app. So we're trying to really apply the sharing economy to EV charging in a way that we can increase the amount of infrastructure available to these EV drivers.
So it seems to me, and I'm sure you have more stats than I do, about electric vehicles on the roadway, that it got off to a little bit of a slower start, right, than anticipated. I know the government's goal is, I think, 30% by 2030. But it was Tesla that kind of came out and sort of made it hip and cool. Did that factor into things?
Yeah, absolutely. The Model 3 or the Model S has been a huge hit. And now with the Model 3 coming out, we actually will expect to see, EV sales doubling in the next year. What I think is a big focus of Tesla has been on their supercharger network. So they've actually been installing charging stations to provide that charging infrastructure, which the drivers need. And then they make great cars, and people love the performance of the cars. They're fast, they're fun, they're really efficient. But, I think we're seeing a shift where now major automakers are committing to going all electric. For example, GM has committed to making 20 additional all battery electric models by 2020. And we're seeing that trend across automakers.
Now, what interested me about your site is I didn't know that there were people who hosted where you could go and basically plug in somebody's driveway. When I go on Syria and I say, where's the nearest charging station, they always send me to a charge point. Mm-hmm. How can you compete with the big companies like ChargePoint and EVgo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, our competitive advantage really lies in the fact that we have low CapEx. So we do not have to install charging stations and own and operate them and pay for the real estate that they occupy. And so really by leveraging existing privately owned stations, we can more quickly build a scalable network.
And these are on people's property. Like this could be the charger I have at my home I could rent out.
Exactly.
And how much can I make?
So we estimate most hosts will make about $1,000 a year if they charge regularly. So it's an added benefit to increase your return on investment in that charging station, which right now only costs about $1,000 to install, and that includes the hardware as well as the installation.
So you can write off that income against the cost of putting in
exactly
the charging station. Okay.
And a lot of our stations are Tesla stations. I want to note that. So people coming out, getting those Model 3 deliveries this next year, a lot of those folks are kind of a different demographic than our Model S drivers. So they are more likely to be renters, multi-unit dwellers. They might not have home charging access. And so being able to rely on those Tesla stations that have already been installed in people's homes is a huge benefit to these new EV drivers.
Do you find that the drivers of electric vehicles, is it generally a second car that they have? For instance, I have a shared driveway with a couple of neighbors, and one of my neighbors is a young doctor at Cottage Hospital, and he just got his first electric vehicle, and he was all proudly, hooking it in, and I was talking with him. Obviously, they've got other cars, they've got a couple of kids, but he loves it because he can just roll down to the hospital or go to the grocery store. But for long trips, it has been up until this point a little more difficult. Is it a second car, or what are you finding? More, is it starting to go into a primary car?
Yeah, historically it has been a second car. Most folks who own an EV have another car in the household. And that's why the Nissan Leaf, for example, was really popular. It only had a 100-mile range, but people were using that as their commuter car around town, and they didn't need a longer range if they had another car. But these long-range EVs, like the Tesla Model S, for example, or now the new Chevy Bolt, can really serve as that single car for a household, especially as we have more and more fast charging stations being installed. So I think that will shift. And also plug-in hybrids such as the Chevy Volt with a V. Those are good alternatives to the full battery electric if people are concerned about range.
Now, how do you protect your technology? Like, what's to stop somebody else, like a EVgo, saying, okay, well, I'm going to compete with her?
Yeah. Well, we have a proprietary pricing algorithm built into the software. And so that helps. What that does is it calculates the price of each transaction based on the vehicle that's charging, the utility provider. And so that's pretty unique. We maintain that as a trade secret. But really, our core business is first to market. We really want to build our network and be that innovative solution that nobody is doing right now. And then we'll be a prime target for acquisition from some of those bigger players.
I always love the process of an entrepreneur's mind. And you're quite young. Mm-hmm. You just finished grad school last year. Did you have other business ideas prior to this? And
this project and this idea was really what inspired me to start a company. I haven't been necessarily a serial entrepreneur or inherently someone that's always thinking of business ideas. For me, I've been more focused on the environmental benefits of this idea. And I came back to grad school to focus on energy and climate and solutions to greenhouse gas emissions. So for me, I'm just extremely passionate about this sector and think that this is a unique opportunity.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you actually know our next guest, Maureen Schulman, who makes solar panels, and you guys met at a co-working facility. How did that come about, and why co-working?
Yeah, so we met a couple years ago at GEM, the Goleta Entrepreneurial Magnet, and she was working there at the time. I was at UCSB, and we met. We just had a meeting there, but it was an opportunity to connect because we're both working in the renewables sort of energy efficiency sector in Santa Barbara. And then we being EV Match went on to do an accelerator program with GEM after graduating from UCSB.
Okay. Are there still accelerator programs in the Santa Barbara area? Because I think GEM's gone now, aren't they?
Yeah. GEM is no longer in existence in that form. There are not that many accelerator programs. There are a few programs associated with UCSB. But what we did was actually went outside of Santa Barbara to get an accelerator program. We participated in Merge Lane, which is a accelerator for female founders in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay. And is that really helpful, the accelerator incubator mode, to take your business to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. At the early stage, it's critical for finding investors, getting that influx in capital at the beginning, and then also having the support of mentors and other entrepreneurs to really kind of guide you through the process.
If you're just tuning in, this is Cowork Radio, and we're talking with Heather Hochrein. She is the CEO of EV Match. It's a peer-to-peer network with electric vehicle charging stations, and I just love the idea. You mentioned in our discussion here that the idea would be to grow to a point where you were acquired by another larger company, and that seems to be what a lot of people are heading towards. But is there vacillation between that? Do you kind of feel like this is your baby and you wouldn't just hand it off to anyone, or do you find yourself thinking about just getting that offer and moving on to the next thing?
Well, this is my baby. It's definitely a big project to take on and exciting to build the company. And I would say I'm not thinking in the super short term in terms of acquisition. We see this as a longer term play, and we plan to build the company over the next 5 years. We're not expecting a really quick turnaround.
Well, you've done very well in a relatively short period of time. What has been the biggest challenge for you in being an entrepreneur and getting this off the ground the way it's gone?
I would say, fundraising is always a challenge. That's probably across the board for all early stage companies.
Do you have some tips that you can give people on how to raise funds?
Well, our accelerator program was very helpful for finding angel investors. We actually had several of our mentors turn into investors. So really taking advantage of those opportunities.
And if I'm looking to join an accelerator program, there's so many out there, how do I choose the right one?
I think thinking about geography, where you want to be, where your market is, and then also sector-specific accelerators. For example, we qualify for energy and mobility types of accelerators, but also women-led companies. So really trying to find an accelerator that has some sort of thematic focus to your business.
You mentioned women, and women entrepreneurs are the largest growing demographic segment right now. But you're also in something which is the auto industry, which has been typically male. Have you found that? Do you feel different being a woman and with the business that you do have? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm often the only woman in the room. That's not uncommon. Or the only woman pitching on stage. I'm going to Austin, Texas next week for a pitch competition, and I looked at the other finalists. Of course, they're all men.
Well, also,
so you're
also in tech, which is also very male-dominated.
Yes.
Now, what do you think about all these new co-working facilities that are for women only? Because every day it seems another one's popping up.
I'm not sure that I would necessarily want to be in a space for women only. I think there's
neither.
So many opportunities to connect and engage with men as well. So, I definitely am supportive of having
everybody
there.
Diversity.
We are talking with Heather Hochrein. She is the CEO and co-founder of EV Match. And if people want more information, maybe they're listening and they actually have an electric charging station at home and they want to find out how to monetize that. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So they can check us out at evmatch.com. And they can also download our app. We have an iOS app in the App Store.
Thank you so much for joining us. You are listening to Cowork Radio. And once again, you can check us out online at www.coworkradio.com. You can also download the shows, interviews, and actually you can listen to Heather's again if you'd like to.
And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and check out our website. And next up, Maureen Schulman. She's here with us. And Maureen is co-founder of Brighton Solar. And they are specialists in engineering and installing solar electric. So we'll be right back after this. You're listening to Cowork Radio.